Silent Hill 2 is often lauded as one of the greatest horror video games of all time. Now, that said, it is a product of its time, and the PlayStation 2 architecture largely as well. And it's a game that unfortunately has been a little bit lost to time, where it becomes harder and harder to actually play unless you're going to emulate it or download the PC version of it. They didn't really re-release it ever, except for, to my knowledge, the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 era Silent Hill HD collection of 2 and 3, which was plagued with a lot of problems because, of course, they had allegedly lost the source code, had to rebuild parts of the game from the ground up. It was just a mess. So with all of that being said, Silent Hill 2 being remade is something that a lot of people were excited for. It's something that a lot of people thought, okay, cool, it's a new way to experience this horror classic on modern day architecture and hardware, and it was a game that I would say was met with a little bit of trepidation, though. People were kind of worried about it, especially with a group like Bloober Team working on it. That said, it was something for me where I was always hopeful because the original Silent Hill game, if you know about the history of Konami and Team Silent who worked on it, it was actually kind of made by a group of people who were expected by Konami to fail. And it went on to be a really big hit. It went on to be something that was considered fantastic. So Silent Hill 2 Remake has been sharing more and more footage now in the past couple days of the game, like I believe about a 13-minute look at the actual gameplay with the Silent Hill transmission, and I actually think it looks pretty good. It's a game that is going to be really hard to judge until we get our hands on it, and I do have a couple of concerns or questions about it, but overall I wanted to talk about some of the things that I thought looked really good in this look at the game. So if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more content, and I do have a question of the day for you, which is, what is your favorite horror game that you've ever played? And if you're not really into horror games and you're watching this, maybe you just like watching horror games, what's your favorite horror movie? Oh, and why for both of those, because it gives me new things to check out. Now, I'm actually not going to be spoiling the infamous twists of Silent Hill 2, even though I do know a lot of people already know them. I don't really think it's my place to do that. So I ask you not to in the comments below as well, because I'll probably be removing those comments for people who want to enjoy the game. But looking at this game is actually pretty well made in terms of the looks of the gameplay and in terms of the quality of the actual graphics. You know, they made Silent Hill look foggy again, something that they actually had problems with in the HD remaster, where the fog textures were all messed up, but it is something that is a staple of Silent Hill as a town. Now, one of the big criticisms I do have of this isn't the game itself at all, it's just the starting point. As someone with OCD and somebody who really likes things to be in order and to collect things on my shelf in order and play through them in order, I really would have preferred that they started at Silent Hill 1, but that doesn't actually have an effect on what I'm seeing here for this game and its quality. This game was very obviously picked because, without getting into heavy spoiler details, it's probably the Silent Hill game that involves the cult the least out of at least the mainline 4 entries. It's the most a standalone horror game, and so it's something that's more of a personal journey for the character of James and for the player, and I think probably something that Konami can use to kind of test the market to see if there's an interest in more remakes. Now, that said, it was an interesting decision to pick Bloober, because I would argue they hadn't really proven themselves with this type of game, but again, neither had Team Silent. So it's something that, to me, it's looking more and more like they are proving themselves with. They did go with a more over-the-shoulder camera behind the main character this time. I do personally wish that we could get some more fixed camera angle games like classic Silent Hill and Resident Evil, but that said, this does seem to be working very well for what they're going for now, and more for that personal journey kind of in-your-face thing. They didn't go with first person. They didn't make James a military combat expert. The combat is still a bit stiff, but that's not a criticism. That's actually something I wanted. I wanted to be able to see James struggle. I wanted to be able to see, this character who is kind of a fish out of water, who's not Master Chief, who's not like a combat veteran. He's not Chris Redfield in Resident Evil 5, who's been through hell and back. This is a normal guy, maybe not the most well-adjusted you'll see in the story, but in terms of just being a civilian, a normal guy, that's what James kind of is. He's not somebody who should have tons of combat experience and just be wiping the floor with Silent Hill monsters. And so I like the way that they show his movement. It's a little bit with purpose, but also kind of cautious. And the way that he fights things is, again, the same way. They do still have all of the blood and I would say gore of the original on the ground and in the game. I saw criticism of it, like when James would hit certain enemies, like, oh, well, why does almost a dust type monster type thing come out of them instead of blood? But if you're actually watching the extended gameplay look, there is still plenty of blood in this game. You know, it's not like they heavily censored the game or anything like that. And I also really like that this game does have sort of a dreary, dreamy look to it, because this game especially was sort of a delving into the deep layers of the mind of the main character. As he went through his original journey, he did come across other characters like Angela or Maria, who we do see in this trailer, but it was very much a personal journey, like I said, for this character. He would, enter parts of their stories as well. I'm trying to keep this as vague as possible for people who haven't played the game yet. And so some of these things crossed over, but this really was a game where Silent Hill was kind of breaking down the barriers of the mind and showing us trauma and fears and a lot of these deep things with James and with other characters around him. And it does look like the team that made this is doing a good job with that. I think there's a lot more environmental effects in, this version of the game, which are interesting. Like, for example, you pick up a note and you see physics on the note. You see it in James's hand. You see papers blow when you enter a room. You see effects happen in the world that I actually think are aided by the look of the over-the-shoulder type camera behind the main character. And yet you still also see zoom-ins and close-ups when you do things like looking at photos on the wall or looking at notes on the ground that you pick up. The map is pretty much the same, except now James is holding it in his hands. I totally get that there's going to be people skeptical about this remake. And you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. If Silent Hill 2 was really special to you, my unfortunate guess is going to be that no matter how well this is made, it will never hit the same way as the original. You know why? Because we know the story, those of us who did play through the original. We know the twists and turns, and they're keeping that story the same. And that story was great. I'm not advocating that they change it, but my point is just that if you already know it, it's like watching a movie for the second time, or if you watched a remake of a film and it had the exact same story. Like, you're going to know what's going to happen. It's just going to be those little details in between that might be a little different. And so they are looking to expand on certain things. That's where, I'm a little worried about the game in some ways, because it was already such a tightly crafted game. But when you have people as well like Masahiro Ito, who was such a horror legend, who helped bring the Silent Hill games to life, also in your corner promoting the game and liking what he sees, that's something that does give me hope with it as well, that it is going to turn out to be good. I like the combat, I like the world, I like the dreariness, the characters are, I think, well designed. I don't have a problem with the way Angela's face looks. Some people did. I don't have a problem with the redesign for Maria. I don't have a problem with the monster design. Overall, I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing, and I'm hoping that this is going to be a really nice return to form for classic horror games. Now, when I first experienced Silent Hill 2, I was probably a little too young. I wouldn't say it traumatized me, but it was something that stuck with me for a while because I was not yet an adult, and it was a game that really kind of jarred me, back on the PlayStation 2 era, because I wasn't used to that sort of game, and I wasn't used to that sort of depth of story. And that's kind of why, for me, I'm hoping that that same thing can happen for people who never played the original. But I don't personally, necessarily think it's going to happen for people who did. Not because the game will be bad, but because I don't believe that experiencing something again for the second time is ever going to be quite the same as experiencing it for the first time ever. But with new camera angles, new gameplay, and kind of an expanded world, I am hoping that it is able to scratch that itch for those of us who are classic fans of the game, while also introducing new fans to it. I do have some problems with just the business decisions around the game. Like, just for example, the fact that this game is coming out, but unlike Metal Gear, there is no remaster collection or anything like that of the originals that you can play that's actually good. I think that that's really a shame, because it would be really nice for, new players and old players alike to be able to experience the original Silent Hill 2 again. I do personally think that it would have been nice to start at the beginning, because if they are ever going to redo 1 and 3, it's a little weird to me to redo 2, then redo 1, then redo 3. But I also understand that Resident Evil has kind of acclimated people to doing things out of order a little bit, and, they're allegedly going back to do even more remakes as well with that series. So it's not like it's out of the realm of possibility or somehow ridiculous. It's just something that I personally, as a hardcore fan of at least the original 4, and someone who even enjoys some of the lesser liked Western titles like Downpour later on, I would have liked to have seen some of those things, at least for the original 4, be remade in order if you were going to do that, and also remastered. That said, like I said before, that doesn't actually say anything bad about what we're seeing here. I'm not really seeing a lot of the complaints that people have. I'm not someone who's super easily pleased either, I don't think. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I just wanted to share this video really quick because I like the gameplay aesthetics. I like what they're going for here, and I'm hoping that this is an example, like the original Team Silent, of a group coming along that we wouldn't necessarily think could do the best job, no offense to them, on this type of game because they hadn't really made this type of game before, and proving us wrong. That's what I'm hoping for, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing so far. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to let me know. Leave a like, subscribe for more content. I appreciate it very much. There's plenty of ways to help support this channel. I will actually flash some of them here as well, and I'm interested in your answer to the question of the day. I hope you have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shui.